Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the echo of Amanda's departure reverberated through the halls, the house seemed to surrender to an eerie silence. Matthew found himself engulfed by the vacancy, the only noise filling the large abode being the gentle whirring of the refrigerator in the kitchen. He ran his palm through his unruly brown locks, a gesture that often preceded moments of contemplation. Amanda's travel, which would leave him in this solitary state for a fortnight, had begun. Taking a sigh, he ambled towards the kitchen, his gaze fixed on the assortment of homemade dishes Amanda had lovingly prepared for him, each bearing instructions to recreate her culinary wizardry in her absence. Despite this considerate gesture, a palpable solitude crept up on him, like shadows claiming their territory with the setting sun. Just then, the tranquility was disrupted by the shrill ring of the phone. He closed the fridge and grabbed the receiver. "Hello?" "Hey, Matt, it's Jessica. Amanda asked me to check in on you." Matthew rolled his eyes. "I'm 35, not 15. I can manage without my wife for a couple weeks." Jessica laughed. "I know, but she worries. Plus, she mentioned something about the lawn needing mowing and some light bulbs that need changing." "I can handle a few chores." "Sure, but I promised I'd help out. I'll stop by tomorrow afternoon, okay? And I'm bringing dinner, so don't argue." Before he could protest, Jessica had hung up. Matthew shook his head and smiled. Amanda's sister had always been a force of nature. Impossible to refuse, and even harder to dissuade once she'd set her mind to something. That night, Matthew found himself restless. The bed felt too large without Amanda's familiar warmth beside him. After tossing and turning for hours, he finally gave up on sleep. He padded down the hallway in his navy blue pajamas, stopping at the closed door of their spare bedroom. His heart raced as he turned the knob. Inside, beneath the bed in a locked trunk, lay his secret, one he'd kept hidden for years, even from Amanda. He knelt down, pulled out the trunk, and opened it with the small key he kept hidden in his nightstand. Inside lay carefully folded women's clothing, dresses, blouses, skirts, all purchased online and never worn outside this room. He lifted out a silky blue blouse, running his fingers over the smooth fabric. For as long as he could remember, Matthew had been fascinated by women's clothing. The textures, the colors, the way they flowed and moved, so different from the stiff, utilitarian men's clothes he wore daily. He'd never told anyone about his interest, too afraid of being misunderstood or judged. Hours passed as he tried on different outfits, catching glimpses of himself in the full-length mirror mounted on the closet door. Something always seemed missing, though. Without makeup or the proper accessories, the transformation remained incomplete. The sound of a car door slamming outside jarred him back to reality. Sunlight streamed through the window. Morning had come without him noticing. He hurriedly changed back into his pajamas, shoved everything back into the trunk, and locked it away just as the doorbell rang. Matthew rushed to the bedroom to throw on a green t-shirt and jeans before answering the door. "Morning, sleepyhead," Jessica greeted, brushing past him with grocery bags in hand. "You look like you haven't slept." "Rough night," Matthew admitted, following her to the kitchen.
"Amanda's only been gone a day, and I already can't sleep without her."
Jessica unpacked groceries, her long brown hair swinging as she moved.
"You two are adorable. Married 8 years and still attached at the hip."
Matthew helped put away the food, grateful for Jessica's company despite his earlier protests. They spent the day tackling Amanda's chore list, mowing the lawn, changing light bulbs, cleaning the gutters. By evening, They were both exhausted. "Pizza and beer?" Jessica suggested, collapsing onto the couch. "Sounds perfect." They ate in the living room, watching an old movie and laughing at the dated special effects. Matthew felt more relaxed than he had since Amanda left. "I'll clean up," he offered when they finished. "Such a gentleman," Jessica teased, stretching out on the couch. "I'll stay here and direct operations." Matthew gathered their plates and headed to the kitchen. As he loaded the dishwasher, he heard Jessica call out, "Hey, Matt, where's your laundry room? I spilled some beer on my shirt." "Through the door by the pantry," he called back. He continued cleaning up, not thinking much of it until Jessica appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression unreadable. "Matthew," she said quietly, "I think we need to talk." His stomach dropped as he noticed what she held in her hands, a red satin dress he'd ordered last month. "I was looking for the washing machine, but I opened the wrong door," she explained. "It's the spare bedroom, and I saw the trunk was open." Matthew couldn't breathe. His secret, the one he'd guarded so carefully, lay exposed. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Jessica set the dress gently on the counter. "How long?" "Years," he finally managed. "Since before I met Amanda." "Does she know?" He shook his head, shame washing over him. "I've never told anyone." Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "Why not?" The question surprised him. He'd expected disgust, laughter, or awkward attempts to change the subject, not curiosity. "I was afraid," he admitted. "People don't understand. They think it's weird or perverted." "Is it a sexual thing?" Jessica asked, her tone neutral. "No," Matthew said firmly. "It's hard to explain. When I wear those clothes, I feel different, more complete somehow." Jessica nodded slowly. "Have you ever gone out dressed up?" Again, he shook his head. "I wouldn't know where to start. The clothes are one thing, but makeup, hair, I'd look ridiculous." A strange expression crossed Jessica's face. "What if you had help?" Matthew stared at her. "What?" "Amanda's gone for 2 weeks," Jessica said, warming to her idea. "What if I helped you? A full transformation. Makeup, hair, everything. No one would have to know except us." His heart raced at the thought. The opportunity to see himself fully transformed with someone's help who actually knew what they were doing. But fear gripped him too. "I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Jessica picked up the red dress again. "This is beautiful, by the way. You have good taste." Matthew couldn't help but smile. "Thanks." "So?" Jessica raised an eyebrow. "What do you say? Want to try something new?" The question hung in the air between them. Matthew thought about all the years he'd spent hiding, the countless hours alone in that spare room, always feeling like something was missing. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's do it." Jessica's face broke into a grin. "Perfect! I'll need to get some supplies. We'll start tomorrow." That night, Matthew barely slept again, but for entirely different reasons. His mind raced with equal parts excitement and terror. By morning, he'd nearly talked himself out of it, but Jessica arrived bearing several shopping bags and a determined expression. "Ready for your makeover?" she asked, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. Matthew eyed them nervously. "What did you buy?" "Makeup, nail polish, a proper wig, brown to match your natural color, and a few other essentials. She pulled out various items as she spoke. Oh, and I brought some of my shoes that might fit you. You're only a couple sizes bigger than me. Matthew picked up a tube of lipstick, turning it in his fingers. I don't know the first thing about any of this. That's why I'm here, Jessica assured him. Let's start with something simple. Removing your body hair. The process took hours. Jessica guided him through shaving his legs, arms, and chest, then helped with plucking his eyebrows into a more feminine arch. By the time they moved on to makeup, Matthew's skin felt raw but strangely smooth. Jessica worked meticulously, explaining each step as she applied foundation, concealer, powder, and blush. The key is blending, she said, demonstrating with a makeup sponge. You want it to look natural, not painted on. Matthew sat still, eyes closed as she worked on his eyelids. How do you know all this? I went through a goth phase in college, Jessica chuckled. Spent hours perfecting dramatic eye makeup. Plus, every woman learns these skills eventually. When she finished with his face, Jessica moved on to his hands, filing his nails and applying a coat of clear polish. We'll save the color for when you're ready, she explained. Finally, she produced the wig, long, flowing brown hair with subtle highlights. She positioned it carefully on his head, tucking in stray hairs and adjusting until it looked natural. Ready to see? She asked, holding up a mirror. Matthew hesitated, then nodded. The face that looked back at him was both familiar and foreign. Jessica had applied the makeup with a skilled hand, not too heavy, enhancing rather than masking his features. With the wig framing his face, his appearance had shifted subtly but unmistakably toward the feminine. What do you think? Jessica asked. Matthew touched his face gently, afraid the illusion might shatter. I look different. You look beautiful, Jessica corrected. But we're not done yet. Now for the clothes. She helped him into a pink satin dress he'd never had the courage to wear, showing him how to adjust it properly. The fabric felt cool and smooth against his freshly shaved skin. Black stiletto heels completed the outfit, adding inches to his height. Walk for me, Jessica instructed. Small steps, hips swaying slightly. Matthew took a tentative step, then another, wobbling slightly in the unfamiliar heels.
This is harder than it looks.
Practice makes perfect. By the end of Amanda's trip, you'll be strutting like a runway model. They spent the rest of the day practicing, walking, sitting, even the way he held his hands. Jessica was a patient teacher, correcting his posture and demonstrating the subtle differences in movement. You need a name, she said suddenly. When you're dressed like this, who are you? Matthew considered the question. I've never thought about it. How about Whitney? Jessica suggested. It suits you. Whitney, he repeated, testing the name. I like it. By evening, Matthew, now Whitney, moved with growing confidence. The awkwardness hadn't disappeared entirely, but she was learning to embrace it rather than fight against it. You're a natural, Jessica observed. Tomorrow, we'll work on your voice and mannerisms. The next several days followed the same pattern. Jessica arrived each morning, and Whitney emerged. They worked on makeup techniques, tried different outfits, and practiced the countless subtle behaviors that signaled femininity. Lower your chin slightly when you smile, Jessica advised, and try to speak from higher in your throat. Whitney practiced until her throat felt strained, but the results were worth it. Her voice would never pass completely, but with the right inflection and vocabulary, she could pull it off for brief conversations. On the 5th day, Jessica arrived with a determined look. "Get dressed," she instructed. "The pink dress, I think." "We're going out." Whitney froze. "Out? Where?" "Just for a drive. No one will see you except passing cars. But you need to experience being Whitney outside these walls." Terror and exhilaration battled within her. The thought of stepping outside, even briefly, seemed impossible, yet thrilling. "I'm not ready," she protested weakly. "You are," Jessica insisted. "Trust me." An hour later, Whitney sat in the passenger seat of Jessica's car, her hands twisted nervously in her lap. The pink satin dress caught the sunlight as they drove through town, windows up and sunglasses on. "See? Not so bad," Jessica said as they cruised through a quiet neighborhood. Whitney's heart raced every time they passed another vehicle, but gradually the fear subsided. No one was pointing or staring. No one even noticed. "Can we stop somewhere?" Whitney asked suddenly. Jessica glanced over in surprise. "You sure? A drive-through, maybe? I want to order something and see if they see me as a woman." Jessica smiled. "Coffee it is." At the drive-through, Whitney's voice trembled as she ordered a latte, but the teenager at the window handed over the drink with a casual, "Here you go, ma'am." That made her glow with validation. "See?" Jessica said as they pulled away. "You passed perfectly." When they returned home, Whitney didn't want to change back. For the first time, being Matthew felt like wearing a costume, not the other way around. "I have an idea," Jessica said that evening as they sipped wine in the living room, Whitney still fully dressed and made up. "I'm hosting a small dinner party tomorrow night. Just a few friends. You should come as Whitney." The wine glass nearly slipped from Whitney's fingers. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious. My friends are open-minded. I'll introduce you as an old friend from college visiting town. It would be the perfect test run." "What if someone recognizes me?" Jessica shook her head. None of them know Matthew well enough to see through the makeup and clothes, and if anyone suspects, we'll say it was a joke or experiment. Whitney considered the proposal. The thought terrified her, but after today's success, a small, controlled environment seemed almost possible, and the chance to be Whitney around other people, to truly exist as her, was too tempting to resist. "Okay," she agreed finally. "But promise you'll rescue me if it's a disaster." "Promise." Jessica raised her glass. "To Whitney's debut." The next evening arrived too quickly. Whitney stood before the mirror, scrutinizing every detail of her appearance. She'd chosen a deep blue dress this time, more appropriate for a dinner party than the pink satin. Jessica had helped with her makeup again, opting for a subtle evening look. "You look gorgeous," Jessica assured her, adjusting the brown wig one last time. "Remember everything we practiced. Small steps, gentle gestures, and if you're not sure what to do in a situation, just observe the other women first." Whitney nodded, too nervous to speak. They'd prepared a basic backstory. Whitney was an old college friend, visiting from Chicago, working in graphic design. Simple enough to remember, with enough truth mixed in to be believable. Jessica's apartment was only a 15-minute drive away. Whitney's palms sweated the entire journey. By the time they arrived, she'd nearly convinced herself to back out. Too late now, Jessica said cheerfully, noting her expression. My friends are already here. The apartment door seemed impossibly intimidating. Whitney took a deep breath, adjusted her dress, and followed Jessica inside. 4 people sat in the living room, glasses of wine in hand. They looked up as Jessica made the introductions. Everyone, this is my friend Whitney from college. Whitney, meet Diane, Robert, Elena, and Chris. Whitney smiled nervously, offering a small wave. Lovely to meet you all. To her amazement, no one gave her a second glance. They welcomed her warmly, making space on the sofa, offering wine, and immediately including her in their conversation about a new restaurant downtown. Whitney's visiting from Chicago, Jessica explained as she handed over a glass of red wine. How long are you in town? Elena asked politely. Just a couple of weeks, Whitney replied, carefully maintaining her practiced higher pitch. I'm between projects at work, so I thought I'd visit Jessica. The conversation flowed naturally as Jessica served dinner. Whitney found herself relaxing gradually, contributing to discussions about movies, travel, and politics. No one questioned her identity or gave her strange looks. She was simply Whitney, another woman at the table. After dinner, as they moved back to the living room for dessert, Robert sat beside Whitney on the sofa. Jessica mentioned you work in graphic design, he said. That's my field too. Which agency are you with? Whitney felt a momentary panic. They hadn't prepared details this specific. I'm freelance, actually, she improvised. Mainly working with small businesses on branding and web design. Robert nodded appreciatively.
Smart move. Corporate work can be soul-crushing. I've been thinking about going independent myself.
As they discussed the merits of freelance versus agency work, Whitney realized she was drawing on her actual professional knowledge. The conversation wasn't an act anymore. She was simply being herself, albeit a version of herself she'd never fully explored. By the time the evening ended, Whitney had exchanged email addresses with Elena, who wanted recommendations for her upcoming trip to Chicago and promised to send Robert links to some design resources they'd discussed. That went well, Jessica commented as they drove home. You were a hit. Whitney couldn't stop smiling.
They had no idea. None at all.
Of course not. You were just being yourself, the female version. Those words resonated deeply. For years, Matthew had thought of his feminine side as something separate, a costume he put on and took off. But tonight had revealed something different. Whitney wasn't a character. She was simply another expression of who he truly was. Back at the house, Whitney didn't immediately remove her makeup or change her clothes as she had on previous nights. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table, still processing the evening.
Something on your mind?
Jessica asked, making tea. I've never felt so authentic, Whitney admitted, even though I was technically pretending to be someone else. Jessica set a steaming mug in front of her. Maybe you weren't pretending at all. The days that followed brought more opportunities to explore life as Whitney. Jessica took her shopping at a mall an hour away, where they browsed women's clothing stores without fear of recognition. They went to a movie, had lunch at a cafe, even visited a salon where Whitney got a manicure. Clear polish only, but still a monumental experience. Each outing built her confidence. By the end of the first week, Whitney moved through the world with growing ease. The awkwardness in heels had diminished. Her voice settled into a comfortable feminine range, and she'd developed a collection of natural-seeming gestures and expressions. Amanda calls tomorrow, Jessica reminded her during dinner.
Are you going to tell her?
The question brought Whitney crashing back to reality. Through all the excitement of her transformation, she'd pushed thoughts of her wife to the background. Now, with Amanda's return just a week away, she couldn't avoid the question any longer. "I don't know," Whitney admitted. "I want to, but I'm scared. This is different from just telling her I like women's clothes. This is..." She gestured to herself, fully dressed and made up as Whitney. "This is who you are," Jessica finished gently. "At least, part of who you are. What if she can't accept it? What if I lose her?" Jessica reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Amanda loves you. The real you, not just the version you've shown her. Give her a chance to know all of you." That night, after Jessica left, Whitney sat alone in the living room, contemplating her future. For the first time in her life, she'd experienced genuine alignment between her inner self and outer presentation. The freedom and authenticity she'd felt as Whitney was something she couldn't imagine giving up completely. But she loved Amanda. The thought of hurting her or losing her was unbearable. When the phone rang the next morning, Whitney had already changed back to Matthew, jeans and a red t-shirt, face scrubbed clean of makeup, wig carefully stored away. "Hey, babe!" Amanda's voice came through the line, warm and familiar. "How's everything at home?"
"All good here,"
Matthew assured her, trying to sound normal despite the storm of emotions inside him.
"Jessica's been helping out, just like you arranged."
"That's great! You two getting along okay?" Matthew hesitated. "Actually, better than ever. We've bonded a bit." "I'm so glad." Amanda sounded genuinely pleased. "I always hoped you two would become closer." They chatted about her business trip, the people she'd met, the presentations she'd given. Matthew listened, contributing appropriately, but his mind kept drifting to the secret he was keeping. "You sound different," Amanda said suddenly. "Is everything really okay?" Matthew took a deep breath.
"We need to talk when you get home. Nothing bad," he added quickly at her concerned silence. "Just important."
"You're scaring me a little, Matt." "Don't be scared. I promise it's not what you're thinking. I just need to share something with you that I should have shared a long time ago." After they hung up, Matthew called Jessica.
"I'm going to tell her,"
he said without preamble. "Good," Jessica replied. "How can I help?" "I want her to meet Whitney. When she comes home next Saturday, I want to be dressed as my true self. But I'm terrified." "I'll be there," Jessica promised. "Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." The final week passed in a blur of preparation. Whitney practiced what she would say, how she would explain something she was still coming to understand herself. Jessica helped her select the perfect outfit, a tasteful navy blue dress that felt both feminine and appropriate for such a serious conversation. By Saturday morning, Whitney was nearly sick with anxiety. Jessica arrived early to help with hair and makeup, offering reassurance as she worked. "Remember," she said as she applied the finishing touches to Whitney's lipstick, "Amanda fell in love with you, the person you are inside. This is just letting her see more of that person." Whitney nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. They'd agreed she would be alone when Amanda arrived, with Jessica waiting nearby in case support was needed. At precisely 3 o'clock, the sound of a car in the driveway sent Whitney's heart racing. She stood in the living room, hands clasped tightly in front of her navy blue dress, brown wig perfectly styled, makeup immaculate but subtle. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. Amanda stepped inside, dragging a suitcase behind her. She looked up, saw Whitney,
and froze. "Hello, Amanda," Whitney said softly. Confusion flickered across Amanda's face, followed by the dawning of recognition. "Matthew?" she whispered. Whitney nodded. "Yes, but when I'm dressed like this, I go by Whitney." Amanda set down her suitcase slowly, eyes never leaving Whitney's face. "How long?" "Always," Whitney admitted. "Since before we met, but I've only had the courage to fully explore it these past 2 weeks, with Jessica's help." At the mention of her sister, Amanda's expression shifted. "Jessica knows about this?" "She discovered it by accident, then offered to help. She's been incredible." Amanda moved further into the room, studying Whitney with an intensity that made her want to hide. But she remained still, allowing her wife to take in this new reality. "You look beautiful," Amanda said finally, her voice thick with emotion. Relief washed over Whitney. "You're not angry?" "I'm shocked," Amanda clarified, "and hurt that you kept this from me for so long. But angry? No!" She stepped closer, reaching out to touch the fabric of Whitney's dress. "Is this why you've always appreciated my clothes so much? Given such thoughtful feedback on my outfits?" Whitney smiled tremulously. "Probably. And the mysterious packages that would arrive when I wasn't home?" "Yes." Amanda shook her head slowly. "All these years, living with someone who wasn't fully sharing themselves with me." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you trust me?" The question struck Whitney like a physical blow. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of losing you, of being judged, afraid you wouldn't love this part of me." "Oh, Matt, Whitney," Amanda corrected herself. "I fell in love with you, not just the parts of you that fit into some conventional box." Whitney felt her own tears threatening to spill over. "I'm still figuring this out myself. I don't know if this is something I need all the time, or just sometimes. I don't know what it means for us, for our future." Amanda took Whitney's hands in hers. "We'll figure it out together. That's what marriage is supposed to be about, supporting each other through changes and discoveries." She paused. "Although I admit this is a bigger discovery than most." A tentative knock at the door interrupted them. Jessica peeked in, her expression anxious. "Everything okay in here?" Amanda turned to her sister. "You knew about this and didn't tell me?" "It wasn't my secret to tell," Jessica replied simply. "And Whitney needed someone in her corner." Amanda nodded slowly. "Thank you for being that someone." She turned back to Whitney. "So, what happens now?" "That depends on you," Whitney said. "On what you're comfortable with. On what we both want." "What do you want?" Amanda asked gently. Whitney considered the question. 2 weeks ago, she couldn't have answered it. But now, having experienced life as Whitney, having felt the freedom and joy of expressing this long-hidden part of herself, she knew. "I want to be able to be Whitney sometimes," she said. "Not always. Matthew is still part of who I am, too. But I need this aspect of myself to exist in the open, not hidden away in a locked trunk." Amanda nodded thoughtfully. "I can work with that." She smiled unexpectedly. "Does this mean I finally have someone to go shopping with who actually enjoys it?" The tension broke as all 3 of them laughed. "Absolutely," Whitney confirmed. "Though I should warn you,
I've developed very specific tastes these past 2 weeks. Jessica groaned theatrically. Don't get her started on shoe styles. She's already more opinionated than most women I know. That evening, Amanda insisted on properly meeting Whitney. They shared wine in the living room while Whitney explained her journey, from childhood fascination with feminine clothing to the revelations of the past 2 weeks. You seem different, Amanda observed. Not just the clothes and makeup. There's a confidence about you that wasn't there before. Whitney smiled. I feel different, like I've finally stopped holding part of myself back. I like it, Amanda decided. Though I'll need time to adjust to calling you Whitney when you're dressed like this. Take all the time you need, Whitney assured her. I'm not going anywhere. As weeks turned into months, Whitney became an increasingly natural part of their lives. Most days, Matthew went to work as usual, dressed in the same professional men's attire he'd always worn, but evenings and weekends often belonged to Whitney, especially when they weren't socializing with people who knew only Matthew. Amanda proved remarkably adaptable, switching pronouns and names depending on whether her spouse was presenting as Matthew or Whitney. She even helped expand Whitney's wardrobe, bringing home dresses she thought would suit her style and teaching her the makeup tricks Jessica hadn't covered. 6 months after Whitney's revelation, Amanda approached her with an unexpected suggestion. Remember my company's annual gala next month? I was thinking maybe Whitney would like to attend this year. Whitney nearly choked on her coffee. Are you serious? Everyone from your office knows Matthew. Not everyone, Amanda corrected. Most have never met my spouse. And those who have, well, it could be time to expand their understanding. The proposal terrified and thrilled Whitney in equal measure. A public event, with people who knew her as Matthew, it was a monumental step. What would we tell them? She asked hesitantly. The truth, Amanda said simply. That this is an important part of who you are. Those who matter will understand. Those who don't, she shrugged. Their loss. Whitney considered the proposition. The journey from locked trunk to dinner parties with Jessica's friends had already been transformative. Taking this next step felt simultaneously impossible and inevitable. Okay, she decided. Let's do it. The gala arrived with alarming speed. Whitney spent hours preparing, with both Amanda and Jessica offering support and last-minute adjustments. She chose a floor-length black gown that Amanda had helped select, elegant without being flashy. Her brown wig was styled in loose waves, makeup polished but understated. As they drove to the hotel, Whitney's courage nearly failed. Maybe this is a mistake. Amanda reached over and squeezed her hand. It's only a mistake if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Are you attending as Whitney because it's who you want to be tonight? Or because you think it's what I want? Whitney considered the question. Because it's who I want to be, she answered finally. But I'm scared. Good. That means it matters. The ballroom glittered with lights and elegant decorations. Whitney held tightly to Amanda's arm as they entered, feeling countless eyes turn their way. Amanda's boss approached first, his wife beside him.
Amanda, wonderful to see you.
He greeted warmly, before turning to Whitney with a slightly confused expression. And this is... Amanda smiled confidently.
This is Whitney, my spouse.
Recognition dawned slowly on his face. Matthew? Whitney nodded, finding her voice. Yes, though I prefer Whitney when I'm dressed this way. To his credit, Amanda's boss recovered quickly. Whitney, then.
Lovely to meet you properly. You look stunning tonight. The evening progressed more smoothly than Whitney could have imagined. There were curious glances and a few awkward conversations, but the outright rejection she had feared never materialized. Instead, she found herself engaged in fascinating discussions, dancing with Amanda beneath crystal chandeliers, and even receiving compliments on her dress from women who clearly had no idea of her history. Near midnight, as the event wound down, Amanda found Whitney by the dessert table. "How are you holding up?" she asked quietly. Whitney smiled, a genuine expression of contentment. "Better than I ever could have imagined. Thank you for encouraging this. Thank you for trusting me enough to share it," Amanda replied. "Though I'm still annoyed it took Jessica finding your secret trunk to make it happen." "Some catalysts we don't choose," Whitney laughed. "But the results can still be beautiful." As they drove home that night, Whitney realized how profoundly her life had changed in the span of 6 months. The secret that had once filled her with shame now brought her joy. The aspects of herself she'd hidden away now existed in the open, accepted, and even celebrated by those she loved most. "What are you thinking about?" Amanda asked as they pulled into their driveway. Whitney turned to her, overcome with gratitude. "I'm thinking that for the first time in my life, I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. Whether I'm Matthew or Whitney, I'm finally just being me." Amanda smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. In the embrace of understanding and self-acceptance, Whitney stood on the threshold of a new chapter in her life. As the door swung open, a soft glow from within illuminated the entryway, symbolic of the warmth and love that resided within these walls. Together, Whitney, Amanda, and Jessica crossed the entrance, their shadows merging into one on the floor. They had triumphed over doubts and fears, choosing instead to walk the path of honesty and authenticity. In doing so, they discovered that the essence of love and belonging lay not in uniformity, but in the celebration of each other's unique spirits. Whitney's personal evolution, from a place of concealment to one of empowerment, is a testament to the power of love and the importance of embracing one's truth. What she thought was a distraction from her true identity was, in fact, an integral part of who she was meant to be. As they entered their home, a place that had witnessed both secrecy and triumph, they knew that the struggles were not over. Yet with the knowledge that they were loved and accepted, Whitney and her partners faced the world and their future as true, authentic individuals.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!